And we're joined this evening by Roy Keane, Patrick Vieira and Gary Neville. The three of them in close proximity for the first time in 16 years since they were squashed together in the tunnel at Highbury. In 2005, Arsenal and Manchester United have been the two leading teams in the country for almost a decade, sharing the title between them. In the first game that season, Manchester United ended Arsenal's 49-game unbeaten run in controversial fashion. And the events that followed in the tunnel in the return match have gone down in league history. So good evening, gentlemen. Patrick, we start with you. What started all this?
What started
it all in the tunnel?
I think it all started with Roy losing his temper.
No, but before that, something had started it.
Before that?
Yes, before that.
It was this kind of, the rivalry between, of course, the two clubs. I think as an Arsenal player, you always wanted to play against the best. At that time, United was the best team. And it was challenging, it was tough, it was really difficult. And obviously, Gary, here on the left-hand side, one of his strengths was intimidated players around, and I think that is one of his strengths. And that time I was getting really, really frustrated about the number of challenges that and the foul aggressivity that he was giving to our players, to Arsenal players. So as a captain, as a leader, I wanted to put him under pressure a little bit.
OK, so that happened in the tunnel after the warm-up then? Does this happen going back up the tunnel after you've warmed up?
Yeah, so before we got in the tunnel to go out for the game, coming in for the warm-up, he's chasing me up the tunnel, screaming at me. So I goes into the changing room and sits down next to Dennis Irwin and said, you know, Vieira's a bit annoyed. he's just basically chased me up the tunnel. And obviously I sat next to Dennis here and Roy was next to Dennis, so Roy...
And you obviously heard that.
Yeah, but to be honest, I was trying to mind my own business. Honestly, I was just focused on the game, you know, quite calm, getting in the zone, and Gary was a little bit upset and he seemed a bit worried. And but I think I said to Gary, so just forget about it. Just obviously we need to focus on the game. And then of course, obviously Patrick wouldn't let it go. You know, typical Arsenal bully. And then he started again in the tunnel just before obviously the game started. And that's where I kind of got a little bit irritated.
How did you find Mr. Keane?
Here we go.
Good.
I'll just say, you gotta choose your words wisely when you're trying to describe the individual. He's a good man. He's a good man. Great player in his time. I think his biggest downfall was he intimidates a lot of people, a lot of players. I think for me, he didn't intimidate me. I think in the way that how the individual that I am today, I don't let too much people intimidate me in the sense of I came to do a job for you. I will try to do it to my best ability. It may not be pleasing to you, certain things I'm doing because I have to improvise. Things mightn't go the way that you wanted, but I think he used to take things a bit too personal with players, and he's take it to a different level. So hence the reason I think a lot of players didn't want to play for him because they think if they made a mistake, it's like the end of the world. They're going to get punished by the school teachers, like, you know, walking around headmaster, walk around with a ruler, stick, don't go there. So it was a kind of a bittersweet. At Sunderland, he was a bit more conservative at Sunderland, and I think he was dealing with a bit more personalities, bigger personalities. So he couldn't stamp his authority in the way that he would intimidate certain people. So he had a lot of senior players. So he used to let the senior players deal with whatever is going on in the changing room. Unless he has to, as a manager, he has to intervene, he would. But he would leave it up to the senior players to do whatever is necessary to get control of the changing room. Ipswich was totally different. Obviously, he had a lot of players who he brought in, a lot of players who was there before, who he wanted to get rid of, that he couldn't get rid of, that he started treating them in different, very strange. And for me, I think it was a bit silly in the way that he treated and spoke to some of the players. You know, there's certain things I won't say, but certain things that were said, and when you do reflect on it, you're thinking, this man is crazy. Because why would you say certain things to players? You're already down in the dump. You're already down. You cannot kick a player while he's down. You need to put, in modern day football, you need to put an arm around the player. Speak to a player. Some players might react better if you give them a bollocking. Some players will react better if you put an arm around them. Not everyone you can absolutely go and just shout and scream and kick stuff down, and you know. So I think he went about that the wrong way. If he learned from it, I don't know. I'm hoping that he has, because obviously he's dealing with much more senior players now with Republic of Ireland, so he may have changed a bit, but you never know what you're going to get from Mr. Roy Keane.
But he obviously liked you because he brought you to Portman Road, and Roy didn't sign players. You know, he knew what he liked.
Yeah, I mean,
and knew who he trusted, and it started a 5-year career here in a place you now sort of call home.
Yeah, I mean, it was, to be fair, when I first signed for him, I was like, you know, I was a bit intimidated, because he's Roy Keane, obviously Manchester United legend, captain, you know, you're thinking, you gotta be, you know, and then obviously knowing Dwight for all the years playing with the Trinidad team, and you get in little stories when we're in the changing room or in the hotels, and he's telling you about what Roy used to do and say. You're thinking, bloody hell, you got your work. I got my workouts over here. But then I think, with the winning nature that he had as a player, obviously I knew that he wanted to bring that into the town. Obviously he had it at Sunderland. He went from 15th in the table in December to absolutely winning the league. You know, I don't think there's going to be another team in a hurry that is going to go from 15th in December to actually winning the championship.
Absolutely.
And it's only and the championship is only getting harder and harder. To be fair, it's getting really difficult. So for him to do that, fair play. You know, it was honestly a remarkable season, and I know he wanted to bring that into the town, but I think he went about it in a very rash way. Like, you know, he didn't sit down and he didn't say, all right, I'm going to get these players, I'm going to get that players. I think he wanted to get players like on the spot, like, get this player, get that player, and not actually sit down and say, okay, I'm going to form a base of a squad here. That, okay, we have 2 players for each department or whatever. You might have a utility player who can play in any position. I don't think he'd done that. He just obviously, okay, I'm going to get this player because this player is not playing for his club, so I'm going to get him. But not necessarily that player is going to fit into the playing style that the rest of the players who's in town going to play. Because you can see it even now. You know, it's have certain times that you look at the town player, you're thinking he's not that type of player. He can play somewhere else. So I think that was one of his biggest downfall, that he never actually. And I think the pressure got to him, and hence the reason why he had to leave. It was a surprise at first when he actually left Sunderland, because you're thinking, okay, we give it another go. But I think he packed it in too early for me. I think he was a bit scared. He left on a kind of high kind of way. So
I think Ipswich fans, I remember the time when Roy came here, I think it was a big thing. I mean, for the town to get a manager, the status of Roy Keane. I remember being in the first press conference when he was introduced. I think it was just like a Hollywood star had walked in. It wasn't any ordinary press conference. And I think a lot of Ipswich Town fans desperately wanted to work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They would love to have had Roy Keane as manager for 10 years and bring
There was a
that.
feeling, wasn't there? This is it now.
Yeah.
He's here. It's going to happen now.
So I think actually the town was quite sad that it didn't work out as much as Roy probably was, and everyone else. It was a shame.
Sometimes you do. Sometimes as players you do have to take certain responsibility. You do. I mean, at the end of the day, we all know we've been around long enough that finger is going to point one way.
Yeah.
You know, the manager.